No year-end holidays for China. They're furiously at work to fulfill Xi Jinping's dream of world dominance. The weapon of choice this time is a dam, the world's biggest. China plans to build it near the disputed border with India, a dam to control the Brahmaputra river. We'll tell you why New Delhi and Dhaka are concerned about this. China is also unveiling new military assets, a warship and a sixth-generation fighter jet. Why now? And what do we know about these toys? In West Asia, Israel is attacking Yemen. Is this the new battlefield? In the US, it's the Indian Americans who are under attack from Trump's MAGA supporters. We'll tell you why. In Africa, France is losing turf and they have only themselves to blame for it. They've been booted out from their base in Chad. Also, why North Korean soldiers are said to be dying in large numbers in the Ukraine war, why elected leaders must undergo cognitive testing, how to celebrate the ideal New Year's Eve, and the world remembers India's former Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh. He is no more. We look at his life and legacy. The headlines first. Slovakia confirms its readiness to host peace talks on Ukraine. Russian President Vladimir Putin says Moscow is not against the move, praises Bratislava's neutral position in the conflict. Slovakia's Prime Minister has stopped all military aid to Ukraine. He is among very few European leaders who have remained close to the Kremlin. Bangladesh's chief advisor Mohammad Yunus proposes lowering the voting age to 17 years, says the youth should have a stake in their own future. Currently, citizens who are 18 years and above can vote in Bangladesh, but some countries like Argentina, Austria and Brazil allow 16-year-olds to vote. Bangladesh plans to hold elections in late 2025 or early 2026. South Korean lawmakers impeached their second president in 2 weeks, sinking the country even deeper into political crisis. The acting president had taken over from President Yoon Suk-yeol, who was impeached on allegations of insurrection. The finance minister will now be the acting president as well as the prime minister. In Pakistan, Imran Khan's party sets a 31st January deadline for the Shehbaz Sharif government. The talks between the two sides started earlier this week. The PTI's two key demands are release of all their workers and formation of a commission to investigate the mayhem which took place in May and November. And Germany's president dissolves parliament, sets 23rd of February as the election date. Last month, Olaf Scholz's government collapsed, prompting early elections. Security and immigration are going to be the big issues in this election. China is at it again. It has found a new way to provoke India, this time not with troop deployments but with a dam. China is building a new dam, the world's biggest, and they are building it right next to the disputed border with India. China says it will be the biggest dam ever built, even bigger than their own Three Gorges Dam. As of today, the Three Gorges is the largest dam in the world. It's one of the few structures on Earth that is visible from space. That's how massive it is. And now China plans to build an even bigger dam in Tibet. The project was approved yesterday. And this is not a new proposal. Chinese officials have discussed it before, but yesterday they gave it the green signal. Beijing is pitching it as a hydropower project. They'll generate electricity from this dam. And the cost? A whopping $137 billion, making it one of China's most expensive infrastructure projects ever. And this is where they plan to build it, on the lower reaches of the Yarlung Zangbo river, the same river that is called the Brahmaputra in India. The Tibetan name is Yarlung Zangbo. The river starts in Tibet. As it flows into India, it enters Arunachal Pradesh. It's a northeastern state of India, although China calls it South Tibet and stakes claim to this territory. The Brahmaputra river flows through the state and then flows into Bangladesh. Finally, it empties into the Bay of Bengal. So this river is shared by three countries, China, India and Bangladesh. All three depend on it, but China wants to control it. Why else would it build a massive dam on the Brahmaputra? You know what a dam does. It regulates the flow of a river. So China can control water supply in the Brahmaputra. In the dry seasons, it can hold back water. In the rainy season, it can suddenly release excess water. Beijing can cause droughts and floods with this dam. And these are not hypothetical scenarios. China is doing it already. It has built many dams, and it is using these dams to starve its neighbors. Look at Southeast Asia. China built 11 dams on the Mekong River. This river flows into 6 countries. There's China, of course, followed by Myanmar, Laos, Thailand, Cambodia, and Vietnam. After building the dams, China started blocking the water. The Mekong water flowing into these countries, China blocked it, and this led to droughts. Water supply dried up in at least 4 countries: Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam. This happened in 2020. In other instances, China's dams have flooded the Mekong Basin. Since 2019, water levels in the Mekong River have repeatedly surged. And this happened without any warning. And along the Thailand-Laos border, it led to millions of dollars in damages for the locals. The new dam in Tibet poses the very same threat. It gives Beijing control over the waters of the Brahmaputra. And that is the obvious purpose of the dam, not power generation. Because look at the scale of this. A dam of this size would generate massive amounts of power. We're talking about 300 billion kilowatt hours of electricity every year. This can serve more than 300 million people. Does China need this much, given that it already has multiple dams? Bloomberg spoke to one expert about this project, and this is what he said, and I'm quoting: "There is zero need for this kind of supply." Then why is China building the dam? Because it wants to weaponize the Brahmaputra. It wants to control the flow of water. It wants to dictate where the river can go. For India, there's another point of concern, and that is Arunachal Pradesh. Like I said, the Brahmaputra flows through this Indian state. China says the state belongs to it. The claim is baseless. It has no historical or legal basis and no international backing. Arunachal Pradesh is an inalienable part of India, but China refuses to back down. In recent years, these claims have gotten louder. Beijing has issued maps. It has given Chinese names to places in Arunachal Pradesh. Earlier this year, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited the state. China responded with a strong protest.
The southern Tibet region is Chinese territory, and the Chinese government has never recognized and firmly opposes the so-called Arunachal Pradesh state illegally established by India.
India has called these claims senseless and baseless. But you see, issuing statements and maps is one thing. Building a dam is quite another. It's a serious escalation. So what should India do? Respond in kind. In 2022, New Delhi announced a dam project in Arunachal Pradesh. It doesn't match the Chinese one in scale, but it's a start. India will have to double down on infrastructure development. Roads, dams, border villages, they're all now strategic assets. And staying with China, their military has been in the news for all the wrong reasons. Disappearing generals, purges at the top, and persistent corruption. Despite all that, China's military expansion continues. Today, they unveiled a new warship, an amphibious assault vessel. It's called Sichuan. As you can see from the pictures, it is quite imposing. Total weight is around 40,000 tons. It's apparently the world's largest amphibious assault ship. But it's not ready for deployment yet. There will be more testing, more sea trials. Only then will the Sichuan be deployed. At first glance, it looks a bit like an aircraft carrier. It's got the same long runway, but the missions differ. An aircraft carrier is basically a floating air base. They're used to establish supremacy over far-off areas. The decks can launch and land fighter jets. An amphibious ship is different. Its main purpose is to transport troops. Say the Chinese want to land soldiers in Taiwan, then aircraft carriers are of no use. They need amphibious assault vessels for this. Conventional ones can only launch helicopters and landing craft. They cannot launch fighter jets. But China's Sichuan can do both. It is fitted with an electromagnetic catapult, which means that it can launch and land fighter jets. So all in all, it's a very impressive ship. But Beijing could have something even more impressive up its sleeve. A sixth-generation fighter jet. Residents in the city of Chengdu recorded a mysterious plane flying over the city. It wasn't shaped like a normal jet. It was shaped like a diamond. Take a look at this first. In China, nothing is accidental. Chances are this eyewitness video was choreographed. It was released yesterday, which was also the birthday of Mao Zedong. So experts believe that it could be intentional. And the fighter jet? Reports say it could be the J-36, a sixth-generation fighter jet made by China. We're talking about cutting-edge technology. They have enhanced stealth modes. They can endure higher speeds, they can operate at higher altitudes, and they have extended range, meaning you can strike distant targets without refueling. That's something that's not possible so far. The current cream of jets are fifth generation. Like America's F-35 and Russia's Sukhoi Su-57, they're often accompanied by tankers or carriers. They need to stop, refuel, and then strike. But a sixth-generation jet may not have to. The Americans and the Europeans are also making such planes, but the Chinese are flaunting it. Just look at the shape of this mysterious plane. It doesn't have a tail, nor does it have any 90-degree shapes. And this is important because radars can easily detect 90-degree shapes. Clearly, the focus here is on stealth. So that's two major military leaps in 2 days. First, this possible sixth-generation fighter, and then the world's largest amphibious assault ship. The question is, why now? Why is China suddenly flexing its military muscles? There could be a number of reasons. One is to fight the perception. Xi Jinping's military purges have dominated headlines. Many experts have questioned its impact on China's military modernization. If you keep firing people, can you get work done? If there is so much corruption, can you build good weapons? Well, China says, yes, you can. Second, the South China Sea is heating up. Beijing aggressively pursued its claim this year, but it has also faced pushbacks. For instance, we saw multiple standoffs with the Philippines. Plus, Donald Trump will take charge next year. In his first term, Trump focused heavily on the South China Sea. He increased US patrols to record highs. US allies are doing the same. Australia is investing more than $7 billion in its navy. The plan is to double its fleet size. Some 11 frigates and 6 large ships are being built. So China will also want to be ready. And third, this has always been Beijing's long-term plan to overcome America's military edge. In pure numbers, they've already done it. China has around 234 warships. The US has only 219. But the quality is very different. The US Navy has 11 nuclear-powered aircraft carriers. They don't have to stop and refuel. They can be deployed for extended periods in far-off waters. China does not have a single nuclear carrier, so Beijing's long-term plan is to project power beyond its region, to achieve superiority over the US military. But as always, quality remains the concern. None of China's new weapons are battle-tested. Their navy is not used to distant deployments, and they haven't fought a war in almost 45 years. So if the shooting starts, will China's shiny new toys survive? Well, that remains the biggest question.
אנחנו מדליקים הערב נר שני של חנוכה. אנחנו נמצאים במלחמת התקומה, דור המכבים של ימינו.
Now let's turn to the war in West Asia. It stopped being about Israel and Hamas a long time ago. Now it's Israel versus everyone who means them harm. One by one, Israel is rooting out its enemies. First, Hamas in Gaza, then Hezbollah in Lebanon. then the military infrastructure in Syria, and now it seems it's Yemen's Houthis. Israel has been pounding them. It conducted fresh strikes on Yemen yesterday. It hit multiple targets. First, there was the international airport in Yemen's capital, Sana'a. An air traffic control tower was blown up. There was damage to a runway as well, and to the departure lounge of the airport, which was confirmed by an unlikely source. The head of the World Health Organization, WHO, Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, was at the Sana'a airport when it was struck. He was in Yemen to negotiate the release of detained United Nations staff. He was just about to leave the country when the airport was struck. Dr. Tedros escaped unharmed, but one of his colleagues was injured. The UN staffer had to undergo surgery, but he's stable now. Others were not as lucky though. At least 3 people died during the airport attack and 3 others were killed near the Hodeidah port. It is one of Yemen's main shipping terminals. Israel struck that too, along with 2 other ports and 2 power stations. Israel says all of these were Houthi targets. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was in a celebratory mood after the strikes.
Tonight, we light a second Hanukkah candle. We are in the war of revival, the generation of the Maccabees today. A little while ago, the Air Force attacked targets of the Houthi terrorist organization in Yemen, both on the coastline and in Sana'a. We are determined to root out this terrorist arm of Iran's axis of evil. We will persist in this until we complete the job.
He says Israel will keep going until the job is complete. What does that mean exactly? Israel's defense minister gave some hints.
We have just seen a precise operation by the Israeli Air Force, hitting specific Houthi target in Yemen, at the airport, at the port. As we said, whoever hurts Israel, we will hurt him. We will hunt down all the Houthi leaders, hit them as we have done elsewhere. No one will be able to escape Israel's long measure. We will attack them in order to remove threats to the state of Israel.
So hitting the airport was not a mistake, and Israel says it will, and I'm quoting, hunt down all the Houthi leaders. We know that Israel can level an entire region. Just look at Gaza. And they are adept at targeted assassinations too. We saw that with Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh, who was assassinated in July in Iran's capital, Tehran. We also saw it with the pager attacks in Lebanon, which took place in September and took out a number of Hezbollah members. We also know that Israel is not too concerned about civilian casualties. Again, look at Gaza and look at the Lebanon pager attacks. By the sounds of it, Yemen will be the next country to face the same fate. The Houthis have been escalating tensions. They have been attacking Israel for more than a year now. They first hit international shipping. Then they attacked Israel directly with drones and missiles. A Houthi missile strike took place earlier today.
The missile force of the Yemeni armed forces carried out a specific military operation targeting Ben Gurion Airport in the occupied area of Jaffa using a hypersonic ballistic missile of Palestine II type. The missile succeeded in reaching its target despite the enemy's censorship, and the operation resulted in casualties and the cessation of navigation at the airport.
That is what the Houthis are claiming. Israel says that this Palestine II missile was intercepted. They say that the Ben Gurion airport was unaffected, but it shows that the Houthis will not back down. They're up for the fight. That being said, the Houthis are not the only ones living in Yemen. The country is going through a civil war. It has been underway for over a decade. The Houthis are one faction. There are others as well. And more importantly, there are innocent civilians too who are caught up in all this chaos. If Israel hits Yemen, if it targets airports and ports used to bring in humanitarian aid, then the ordinary people of Yemen will suffer the consequences. Netanyahu said Israel's mission is to root out Iran's proxies, their axis of evil, as he called it. But will ordinary, war-weary Yemenis get rooted out as well? They're calling it a MAGA civil war. Donald Trump supporters versus other Donald Trump supporters. It's bitter, it's racist, but frankly, it's also predictable. And guess who's caught in the middle of this civil war? The Indian American community. Let me tell you where it all started. Last week, Donald Trump picked an advisor for artificial intelligence. His name is Sri Ram Krishnan. Now, Krishnan was born in Chennai. He went on to work for many US companies like Microsoft, Twitter, Facebook, and Snap. In 2021, he turned to venture capitalism. He mainly focused on companies working with AI. In other words, he's the perfect pick. He can nudge America's AI policy in the right direction, but Trump's core base is not happy. And what's their issue? Not Krishnan's resume or experience. Their problem is his race. Some Trump supporters do not want an Indian American in the presidential team. They have two problems. One, that Krishnan has Indian heritage. It doesn't sit well with their white supremacy goals. And two, that he supports immigration, specifically with the H-1B visa. Now, H-1B is a special visa category in the US. It mainly covers high-skilled jobs, like engineers or IT professionals or professors. And right now, H-1B visas are capped. There is an upper limit on how many visas can be issued. Sri Ram Krishnan is in favor of removing the cap, but the far right does not like that. And leading the charge is Laura Loomer. She's a far-right conspiracy theorist. She's also a darling of Trump supporters. Loomer is leading the racist campaign against Krishnan and Indian Americans. She has mocked the IQ of Indians. She also called the H-1B visa applicants third world invaders. But guess who is opposing her? Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, both of them have defended Sri Ram Krishnan. They're also calling for more foreign talent in America. In fact, listen to what Ramaswamy said. Our American culture has venerated mediocrity over excellence for way too long, a culture that celebrates the prom queen over the math Olympiad champ or the jock over the valedictorian will not produce the best engineers. He basically dissed American culture, and that has riled up the far right even more. You see, the original MAGA was made up of conservatives. It even included far-right lunatics like Loomer. They do not like any policy that will increase migration. Instead, they want to focus on American workers. But the new MAGA is different. It is dominated by tech bros like Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. Musk himself is a migrant, and Ramaswamy is the son of migrants. For them, the migration problem is limited to Mexico. They do not oppose talented migrants. Right now, we are seeing the clash of these two groups, but frankly, it is not surprising. We saw indications of this when Ramaswamy ran for president. He was more Trumpian than Trump himself. Yet MAGA questioned him. They asked, why should a Hindu become US president? They said Hinduism was wicked and pagan. So these fault lines are not new. The euphoria of Trump's victory hid them temporarily, but now they're being exposed. And Donald Trump must take the blame for this. He kept feeding the fire of white supremacy. He villainized migrants for politics, and look at the result. The OG MAGA hates all migrants. Doesn't matter if you're talented. Doesn't matter if you're pro-Trump or not. They hate all of them. Because the sentiment is rooted in race and religion. The question is, what happens next? Ideally, Trump should be defending Sri Ram Krishnan. He's defended a number of his other cabinet picks, including a man who allegedly paid for sex with a minor. Yet, Trump is silent on Krishnan. It tells you everything about Donald Trump. This is a man who will do anything for power, even push his own allies under the bus. It's also a wake-up call for tech bros like Elon Musk. They basked in MAGA glory after November, but now they're facing MAGA fury. They're being forced to confront the true reality of Donald Trump's support base. And the best part? His presidency hasn't even started yet. Don't be surprised if this civil war escalates after January.
Dr. Manmohan Singh was the most unlikely Prime Minister. He was more an accidental one. When Sonia Gandhi refused to take the job in 2004, it was the mild-mannered, soft-spoken economist who was a choice.
I will uphold the sovereignty and integrity of India.
While it did cause much heartburn in the Congress, Sonia Gandhi was convinced that Dr. Singh was the right man for the job. Dr. Manmohan Singh had been the governor of the RBI, deputy chairman of the Planning Commission, secretary in the Finance Ministry. While his resume was impressive, many in the Congress felt he was not equipped to head a coalition government. Sonia Gandhi was aware of this, which is why she staunchly backed Dr. Singh during his tenure, even reprimanding her party colleagues when they contradicted him publicly. She did not even spare her own son, Rahul Gandhi, who embarrassed Dr. Singh in 2013 by tearing up an ordinance which would protect convicted lawmakers. Dr. Manmohan Singh was away in the United States at that time. After Rahul's stunt, the then opposition BJP called for Dr. Singh's resignation. Sonia instructed Rahul to meet the Prime Minister and apologize. The fact that Sonia Gandhi had chosen a politically naive person as Prime Minister made Dr. Singh vulnerable to the attacks of being a weak and rubber-stamped Prime Minister. There were reports of him being snubbed by seniors like Pranab Mukherjee at cabinet meetings. Indo-US nuclear deal turned out to be a watershed moment. Dr. Singh was convinced that it was a good deal and would fulfill India's energy needs. The left threatened to withdraw support and urged Dr. Singh and Sonia Gandhi to defer the deal. But he dug his heels in. Dr. Singh not only dared the left to walk out, he also said he would resign if asked to take back the deal.
I am very proud to say that our Prime Minister, Shri Manmohan Singh Ji, has recognized both the problem and a potential solution. The magic of what Shri Manmohan Singh Ji is doing is that within the problem, he has identified an opportunity that is significantly larger than the problem itself. I would like to support our Prime Minister and like to say that he has shown tremendous courage and confidence in the Indian people.
Sonia Gandhi was convinced. She asked the party to get on board. Mulayam Singh, Ajit Singh also backed the deal and it went through. The left did withdraw the support, but the UPA was steady. Singh emerged as king, and this was reinforced when he came back to power with a thumping majority in 2009, riding high on farm loan waivers.
हमारे यूपीए सरकार ने जो किसानों के लिए किया है, जो कर्ज की माफ़ी कर रहे हैं, तो वो एक क्रांतिकारी कदम है, एक ऐतिहासिक कदम है.
But soon after victory, things started to unravel in UPA too. Dr. Singh objected to the inclusion of A. Raja and T.R. Balu as ministers, but the DMK threatened to withdraw support. He had to succumb to pressure and things were never the same again. Corruption allegations propped up. The coal scam hit Dr. Singh and he was summoned for questioning by the parliamentary committee. He was also accused of going soft on the 2G scam.
15वीं लोकसभा की सरकार आज
India is in mourning. Former Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh has passed away. He had a public career spanning over 4 decades, a period in which he not only witnessed but also shaped India's transformation. Dr. Singh's biggest legacy was India's economic liberalization. He oversaw it as the finance minister of the country. He turned India from a laggard into an economic powerhouse. Then he served as Prime Minister for 10 years and shaped India's foreign policy. A man of few words, one of his most famous quotes was that history will judge me kindly. Throughout the day today, tributes have been pouring in from India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his cabinet to India's opposition parties and global leaders like French President Emmanuel Macron, Brazil's President Lula da Silva and former Afghan President Hamid Karzai. They've all paid their tributes. Our next report looks at his life and legacy.
The year was 2010. The global economy was reeling from the shock of the 2008 financial crisis. A severe downturn had swept the world. America was still recovering. The Eurozone was in disarray. Amid this turmoil, leaders of the G20 nations met in Toronto. India's then Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh, was there as well. He stood out in the crowd of world leaders. Dr. Singh was the only head of state who was an economist. His unique position earned him recognition, even from his American counterpart.
The extraordinary leadership that Prime Minister Singh has provided, not just to India, but to the world. And I can tell you that here at the G20, when the Prime Minister speaks, people listen.
Dr. Singh was no stranger to adversity. He was born in pre-independent India. He belonged to a generation that saw their lives torn apart by the bloody partition. Those experiences deeply influenced him. They shaped his decisions during India's own economic crisis in the 1990s. At the time, the Indian economy was on the verge of collapse. Foreign reserves were alarmingly low. They came down to just $1.7 billion. That was barely enough to cover 3 weeks of imports. The foreign press had declared India a caged tiger. It was Dr. Singh who set it free. Back then, he wasn't the obvious choice for finance minister, but his credentials left no room for doubt. As a student, he studied economics, first at the Punjab University and later at the University of Cambridge. He earned his doctorate in economics at Oxford. In government, Dr. Singh had held every top economic position. He served as India's chief economic advisor, the governor of the Reserve Bank, and the country's finance secretary, before becoming finance minister in 1991. That is the year that Dr. Singh unveiled his path-breaking economic reforms.
An India worthy of the dreams of the founding fathers of our republic. We shall pay any price, bear any burden, make any sacrifice to realize those dreams. India is on the move again. We shall make the future happen.
Serendipity found Dr. Singh again in 2004. That year, he became India's Prime Minister. If economic reforms defined Dr. Singh's legacy as finance minister, as Prime Minister, foreign policy would take center stage. In 2008, he risked everything for a landmark nuclear deal with the US. It ended a 30-year American ban on nuclear trade with India. More importantly, it reshaped India's global standing. In 2009, Dr. Singh achieved yet another important landmark when Brazil, India, China and South Africa decided to team up. Russia would later join their ranks. The group came to be known as BRICS. Dr. Singh returned to power for a second time that year, but in the second term, his limitations were exposed. Scandal after scandal plagued his government. A mass protest erupted over corruption allegations in 2011. This was followed by street protests after a gruesome gang rape in New Delhi in 2012. Dr. Singh appeared ineffective and powerless in that period. His approach to Pakistan came under fire as well, especially after the 26/11 Mumbai attacks. In his last press conference as Prime Minister, Dr. Singh addressed these criticisms.
I do not believe that I have been a weak Prime Minister. History will be kinder to me than the contemporary media or the power.
The Indian government has declared a 7-day mourning period. Dr. Singh will be cremated on Saturday with full state honours. Tributes have poured in from all quarters, from allies to opposition, from national to global leaders. The best tribute perhaps came from the current Indian Prime Minister, Narendra Modi.
एक नेक इंसान के रूप में, एक विद्वान अर्थशास्त्री के रूप में और रिफॉर्म्स के प्रति समर्पित लीडर के रूप में उन्हें हमेशा याद किया जाएगा.
It's the last week of 2024. There's barely any time left for the new year, yet somehow France managed to squeeze in another loss. Right at the end of 2024, France just lost a military base in the Central African nation of Chad. It's quite the way to end a miserable year for the country. Let's show you some scenes from Chad yesterday. French military vehicles and aircraft lining up for one last photo before driving off into the desert. The vehicles were stationed at the Faya-Largeau military base. France built this base in the 1940s. It has been central to their African strategy for 8 decades. But yesterday, France handed over the base to Chad. There were about 30 French soldiers at this base. They were the ones driving off. They're headed about 780 kilometers south to Chad's capital, N'Djamena, where they will board a flight back home. Soldiers from other bases will follow soon. There are about 100 in eastern Chad at a base in the city of Abéché. They will be the next to leave. After that, French troops stationed at N'Djamena will also depart. France had about 1,000 troops in this country, but last month Chad tore up the defense pact and gave the French 6 weeks to vacate. Chad is the latest African nation to give France the boot after Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger. The 3 West African nations kicked French troops out over the last 2 years. Military coups took place in all these 3 countries. The new military juntas decided to sever ties with France and join hands with Russia instead. Russian mercenaries replaced French soldiers in other Sahel states. Moscow is in talks with N'Djamena as well. But for now, Chad says it will handle its military affairs alone. It says it is reclaiming its sovereignty.
La décision de retrait des forces françaises est une décision.
The decision to withdraw French troops is an exclusively sovereign decision with regard to Chad, and we felt that after several decades of independence and proclamation of the Republic, it was no longer useful to have a foreign military base in our homeland.
Plus utile d'avoir une base militaire étrangère dans notre pays.
Chad is kicking France out because of sovereignty. The 3 junta-ruled Sahel states switched ties to Russia. Both resulted in the same thing, France losing its hold in Africa, and this has become a trend. 2024 was an especially bad year for France because Chad's leader actually has good ties with Paris. It isn't like the junta chiefs elsewhere. But even an ally like him decided that he had enough of the French troop presence. It's a similar situation in Senegal, another former French colony which shares decent ties with Paris, but it also wants French troops out. So what is Paris doing about all of this? How is it ensuring that it has a better 2025? President Emmanuel Macron says that he has a plan.
Nous avons voulu faire évoluer notre modèle.
We wanted to further develop our model. Where we had established historical bases in many countries, we wanted to rethink our presence by co-constructing a partnership and cooperation with many countries, expression of needs, training, equipment, intelligence cooperation, one-off operations, but we are in the process of changing the logic.
Coopération en matière de renseignement, opération ponctuelle.
He says France is changing its model, changing its logic when it comes to military bases. There's one problem though. Macron said this while he was in Djibouti last week. He said this as he touted a greater role for the French base there. He wants to use it for power projection in Africa. Talk about being tone deaf. Macron also lauded shared cultural and linguistic values between France and Djibouti. You can't make this up. Here's a message for all former colonizers. The reason we have a shared language is because you colonized us, because you forced us to learn your language. We share culture because you forced it down our throats. Macron's moves show just why France is losing its grip. The African nations want sovereignty and dignity. They want France to acknowledge the past and treat them with respect. Until France does that, they will keep losing their African bases. In Ukraine, North Korean soldiers are suffering heavy losses. Recently, Kiev captured one such soldier. He was believed to be the first North Korean prisoner of war. That soldier has now died in captivity. But he's not the only one. Pyongyang deployed around 12,000 soldiers to Ukraine. Reports suggest at least 3,000 of them are either dead or injured. What explains these heavy losses? How are North Korean soldiers impacting this war, and can they change the tide in Moscow's favor? Our next report tells you.
In October this year, Seoul came out with a strange report. It said North Korean soldiers were fighting in Russia. No one knew how many there were or what they were planning on doing there, but it meant one thing. Pyongyang had joined Moscow's war in Ukraine. 2 months later, there's a lot more that has come to light about these soldiers. Recently, one of them was captured by Ukraine. He was believed to be the first North Korean prisoner of war. That soldier has now died in captivity. Intel says it was due to serious injuries incurred in the war, and he's not alone. North Korea sent around 10 to 12,000 soldiers to Russia. Reports suggest nearly 3,000 of them have been killed or wounded in the war. But what are these troops doing there? Most of them have been deployed in the Kursk region, the one Ukraine captured from Russia this summer. But the battle over Kursk is not over. And Moscow was hoping these North Korean soldiers would help tip the scales in their favor.
Dear Ukrainians, today there are already preliminary data that the Russians have begun using soldiers from North Korea in the assaults, a noticeable number. The Russians include them in consolidated units and use them in operations in the Kursk region. For now, it is only there, but we have information that they can be deployed on other parts of the front line.
But they don't seem to be their best bet. North Korea has one of the world's largest militaries. Yet none of these soldiers have any experience of real combat. North Korea has not fought in a major war since the 1950s. Plus, these soldiers are very young, mostly in their teens or early 20s. They were all trained in North Korea's mountains, but in Ukraine, they face a completely different landscape. Combine that with malnutrition and poor training, and it's a deadly combo. These North Korean soldiers may have been deployed to the front lines, but they didn't know what would hit them. That meant they suffered heavy losses.
NIS said that North Korean troops lack of experience in drone warfare, and they were mobilized as frontline storm troops in open terrain which they are unfamiliar with.
But what they lack in skills, these troops can make up in numbers and physical tolerance. Most of these troops are from Pyongyang's 11th Corps, which is one of the best units in the country. They may not be great militarily, but they can tolerate physical pain and a high level of psychological torture. Now, neither North Korea nor Russia has talked about these troops. Pyongyang recently mentioned its new alliance with Moscow was effective. But even that statement did not mention the troops. Russia, too, has not directly responded to these reports. Again, no mention of the soldiers. But their silence indicates just one thing. Moscow and Pyongyang are taking their friendship to the next level. First, it was North Korean weapons in Ukraine, and now it's North Korean soldiers. But can North Korea turn the tide in Russia's favor? That remains to be seen.
Our story starts with an 81-year-old woman. Her name is Kay Granger. She is a U.S. Congresswoman from the state of Texas. On July 24th, she voted on the floor of the House, but since then she's been out of action. She missed key House votes. She wasn't seen at the U.S. Capitol, so many wondered what happened to her. Then some reports came out, and these reports said that she'd gone missing. She was found roaming aimlessly and then put in a retirement community, a place that specializes in memory care. That's what the report said. Her family has denied it, though. They say that Kay Granger had dementia issues. So she moved into an independent living facility. Well, whatever the truth, this story raises an important question. And Elon Musk, of all people, asked it. Let me in fact quote from his post. This is what Elon Musk said. Maybe we should have some basic cognitive test for elected officials. This is getting crazy. That's what he said. And for once we agree with Elon Musk. We elect leaders to lead our nations, to take crucial decisions, to make laws, but we don't know if they are mentally fit for it, if they're capable of legislating and leading. And this has been a long-standing concern. Take the US elections this year. Kamala Harris joined the race very late in the month of July because until then, Joe Biden was running even though he could barely walk. And that's all that anyone could talk about, the way he walked, the tumbles he took, the slurring of words, the constant looks of confusion. There were doubts about his cognitive ability, but apparently none of this could disqualify him. He quit the race only when it became absolutely impossible to stay on. And he's still the US president with the same mental faculties. This happens because there's nothing to stop it from happening. Cognitive testing for leaders is not mandatory. Yes, there is media scrutiny and pressure from the opposition if they sense a weakness, but no rules. Some leaders voluntarily release medical records. In the US, presidents often undergo annual physical exams. Russia requires a medical certificate of health. In China, leaders undergo a rigorous internal vetting process. But mental fitness is not always a part of it. Also, none of it is compulsory. It is at the discretion of a leader. And that is the problem. Because cognitive ability is not just about memory loss or dementia, it is about being sharp enough to process complex issues, to grasp new technology, to adapt to the ever-changing world that we live in. And let's face it, it's a job that demands strategic thinking and problem solving. The stakes are just too high to ignore this. So why has this not been addressed yet? Because it does not suit the people in power. Also, age is a sensitive subject. No one wants to be seen as discriminatory. But here's what we'd like to say. This is not about discrimination. This is about transparency. Other jobs require basic competence tests. Pilots have to pass medical checks. Armies across the globe, including in India and the US, have cognitive tests. Doctors have to prove their fitness to practice. Even your Uber driver has to meet certain standards like pass the driving test. So why shouldn't elected leaders face this scrutiny? They cannot be MIA for 6 months and then turn up at a dementia facility. It is time to think about this, about cognitive testing for elected leaders, because leadership is not just a title, it is a duty that you have to be able to perform. It is the last Friday of 2024. If anyone still says TGIF, looking at you millennials, then today is your last chance to be cringy, because the New Year vibes have arrived. But let's be honest for a minute. If there is an award for the most overrated night of the year, it should go to New Year's Eve. At least we think so. And you may agree. There is too much pressure to have a good time, too many decisions to make, to drink or not to drink, to go out or to stay in. Should you manifest wellness or push and shove to get the best view of the fireworks? Should you Irish goodbye the guests? Or go for that South Asian goodbye and hang out by the door for another hour? Basically, New Year's Eve is full of promise and excitement, but it also comes with built-in pressure, perpetual FOMO, and traffic, and so much of it. We are days away from the New Year's Eve, but you can already see the build-up, quite literally. In India, an expressway saw a 12-kilometer-long traffic jam. Vehicles were stuck bumper to bumper for hours. In major hill stations, roads are chock-a-block with tourists. Hotel occupancy has surged by 50%. In the next few days, it is expected to go up to 80%. And India is not an isolated case. In the Netherlands, traffic jams have increased by 8%, and by Dutch standards, it is a lot. And in the US, about 120 million people are expected to travel. This is a 5-year high. Meanwhile, Rome is expecting 32 million visitors. This New Year's clashes with their 2025 Jubilee, which is a year of faith and forgiveness. Though what is hard to forgive is this: New Year is one of the few holidays that will most likely not reward your personal effort. The end result will probably be underwhelming, and studies prove it. No matter what you do, New Year's Eve is generally terrible. And the harder people try to make it fun, the more dissatisfied they are. Data literally shows this. So how can you ease the pain? How can you celebrate your ideal New Year's Eve this year? We looked at research, and here are 3 tips for you. First, lower your expectations. The lower, the better. Because you know what? Forcing yourself to be happy is the best way to be miserable. So if you assume that you will not have the best time on this day, it can cool off the pressure. And if you do have a good time, it feels great. Secondly, remember, New Year's Eve does not mean all that much. January 1st is just a number, and across the world, people choose different numbers. In China, the New Year will begin on January 29th. In Ethiopia, September 11th. For Muslims, it is in June. And in India, you get at least 9 chances to do New Year's right. Thanks to cultural diversity, not just the dates, but the way to bring in a new year differs as well. In India, many of us light lamps. In South Africa, people throw unwanted items out of windows. In Denmark, they smash plates. In the US, they drop things. In New York, it is the ball drop in Times Square. And in Indiana, it's watermelons. In some countries, people eat things. In Spain, grapes. In Brazil, lentils. While the Danish smash plates. So you get the gist. And this brings us to the 3rd tip. There is no one ideal way to bring in the new year. You can go to that party, have a good time, or find a corner to cry, process 2024, or the fact that the kids born in the year 2000 will now be turning 25. You can also host a party and build a tower of water instead of champagne glasses. Send out good vibes into 2025 by hydrating drunk people. You can even watch the world burn and crack the painful "see you next year" joke. You can stay in, smash plates, eat grapes, watch Netflix, spend time with your loved ones, or do it alone. But either way, do what you want to, not what social media says, not what rom-com suggests. Greet 2025 your way, because there is no better way to start a new year.
Dr. Manmohan Singh was the most unlikely Prime Minister. He was more an accidental one. When Sonia Gandhi refused to take the job in 2004, it was the mild-mannered, soft-spoken economist who was a choice.
I will uphold the sovereignty and integrity of India.
While it did cause much heartburn in the Congress, Sonia Gandhi was convinced that Dr. Singh was the right man for the job. Dr. Manmohan Singh had been the governor of the RBI, deputy chairman of the Planning Commission, secretary in the Finance Ministry. While his resume was impressive, many in the Congress felt he was not equipped to head a coalition government. Sonia Gandhi was aware of this, which is why she staunchly backed Dr. Singh during his tenure, even reprimanding her party colleagues when they contradicted him publicly. She did not even spare her own son, Rahul Gandhi, who embarrassed Dr. Singh in 2013 by tearing up an ordinance which would protect convicted lawmakers. Dr. Manmohan Singh was away in the United States at that time. After Rahul's stunt, the then opposition BJP called for Dr. Singh's resignation. Sonia instructed Rahul to meet the Prime Minister and apologize. The fact that Sonia Gandhi had chosen a politically naive person as Prime Minister made Dr. Singh vulnerable to the attacks of being a weak and rubber-stamped Prime Minister. There were reports of him being snubbed by seniors like Pranab Mukherjee at cabinet meetings. Indo-US nuclear deal turned out to be a watershed moment. Dr. Singh was convinced that it was a good deal and would fulfill India's energy needs. The left threatened to withdraw support and urged Dr. Singh and Sonia Gandhi to defer the deal. But he dug his heels in. Dr. Singh not only dared the left to walk out, he also said he would resign if asked to take back the deal.
I am very proud to say that our Prime Minister, Shri Manmohan Singh Ji, has recognized both the problem and a potential solution. The magic of what Sri Manmohan Singh Ji is doing is that within the problem, he has identified an opportunity that is significantly larger than the problem itself. I would like to support our Prime Minister and like to say that he has shown tremendous courage and confidence in the Indian people.
Sonia Gandhi was convinced. She asked the party to get on board. Mulayam Singh, Ajit Singh also backed the deal and it went through. The left did withdraw the support, but the UPA was steady. Singh emerged as king, and this was reinforced when he came back to power with a thumping majority in 2009, riding high on farm loan waivers.
हमारे यूपीए सरकार ने जो किसानों के लिए किया है, जो कर्ज की माफ़ी कर रहे हैं, तो वो एक क्रांतिकारी कदम है, एक ऐतिहासिक कदम है.
But soon after victory, things started to unravel in UPA too. Dr. Singh objected to the inclusion of A. Raja and T.R. Balu as ministers, but the DMK threatened to withdraw support. He had to succumb to pressure and things were never the same again. Corruption allegations propped up. The coal scam hit Dr. Singh and he was summoned for questioning by the parliamentary committee. He was also accused of going soft on the 2G scam.
15वीं लोकसभा की सरकार आजादी के बाद इस देश की सबसे बेस्ट सरकार है. 2G में 1,76,000 करोड़ का घाटा और कोयला आवंटन में 1,86,000 करोड़ की लूट. इसके बाद ये सरकार एक मिनट भी अपने पद पर बचने का अधिकार नहीं रखती है.
UPA ministers rushed to defend him, but the damage was already done.
मैं आज इनसे आग्रह करूंगा कि संसद में आके डिबेट करें. अगर हम गलत हैं तो हमें कटघरे में खड़ा करें. इश्यू इसके इसमें कोई धांधलेबाजी नहीं है. ये कहने का मतलब है कोल कहीं बिका नहीं है. दिस होल क्लेम इज फॉल्स एंड इट इज मैलिफाइड.
The dismantling of the UPA too coincided with the rise of Narendra Modi, who projected himself as a clean alternative to the corruption-ridden UPA.
दिल्ली की सल्तनत ने भारत के संघीय ढांचे को पिछले 50 साल में जो नुकसान न हुआ हो, उससे ज्यादा नुकसान ये UPA 2 ने किया है.
Dr. Singh was visibly shaken. His own party had begun to speak out against him. Many felt that he should have been replaced.
I would be very happy to work for the Congress party under the leadership of Mr. Rahul Gandhi.
Sources say close to the 2014 Lok Sabha elections, Dr. Manmohan Singh was hurt and felt let down by his own party. In his last press conference as the Prime Minister, this is what he said.
Now it's time for Vantage Shots. Images that tell the story. 100 vehicles from Israel form a ribbon sign calling for a hostage deal in Gaza. Indigenous Peru villagers settle their grievances through fist fights ahead of the new year, and the annual Elephant Festival kicks off in Nepal with unique events like elephant football. Finally, we are taking you back in history. On this day in 1911, India's national anthem, Jana Gana Man, was sung for the first time. It was at the Calcutta session of the Indian National Congress. Jana Gana Man was written by Rabindranath Tagore. In 1950, it was officially declared India's national anthem. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend.
Namaste, and this is a special tribute to one of the foremost Prime Ministers of Bharat who changed the economic shape of the country and perhaps sent it in the direction where we continue to march on today. Joining us now is Sri Dinesh Trivedi, former Union Minister, Railways and also the Health Minister during the UPA term. Dinesh Trivedi ji, namaste. Thank you for your time. Your thoughts on Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh as we remember him fondly?
Well, as I said, that not only India, but perhaps the whole world is sad because world has lost a true scholar and a statesman. So this is where I feel very sad, obviously. And I was fortunate to be part of Manmohan Singh's cabinet. And I knew him even before that as a governor, Reserve Bank, Planning Commission, Finance Secretary, Finance Minister. And he was my colleague in Rajya Sabha. The reason I say colleague is because he treated everybody as a colleague. And even when he was chairing a cabinet meeting, which was every week, he never made us feel that he was the Prime Minister of India. Very humble, very soft, and to the point. There was not a single word which was extra than required. So one learned a lot of things from Dr. Manmohan Singh by even just by staying with him. Throughout the meeting, the way he would conduct, the way he would listen, and we all had freedom to speak whatever we want to speak related to our ministry. And there could have been very heated exchange of words also, as long as they are civilized. And we could hold our turf and we could argue that this is what we need for our ministry. And it was total freedom given, absolutely. And whatever he did was beyond any particular political party line. He did it for the country, he lived for the country, and he had his last breath for the country.
Someone who always put Bharat first is something many people have talked about and said about Dr. Manmohan Singh. May I ask you, any incident, memory, anecdote that comes to mind that perhaps you will also remember fondly while thinking about?
Plenty. I mean, I don't know where to begin, just to give how democratic he was. Those days in the cabinet meeting, while we are having the meeting and whatever we are talking, some particular news channel, I don't want to name them, used to have breaking story that this is what is happening at present in the cabinet. And after that, some of us said that, Dr. Saab, what's this happening? Everything is getting leaked from the cabinet meeting. He said, listen, I have two choices. Either I tell all my colleagues to put their phones outside, or I trust them. He said, I don't mind the news getting leaked, but I would not like to distrust my colleagues. So I would rather trust them. And whoever is doing that will understand. And believe me, after that, it stopped. So these were his ways. But he was, there were a lot of issues for which he was really concerned, like Anna Hazare issue. Because there were many people, I was part of the Cabinet Committee on Political Affairs, Cabinet Committee on Security. So everybody had their own views how to tackle this. And at the end of the day, Manmohan Singh was quite upset about the whole thing. Because, the man was so clean and so upright. But a lot of such things he was sad about it, that what is happening. I remember we had such a heated exchange of words with Pranab Babu and Dr. Manmohan Singh on the Teesta agreement. And I had to do my duty as the representative of TMC and Mamata Banerjee. And at the end of the day, Manmohan Singh was very kind. He said, yes, I agree with Mamata ji. It's very important for Bengal and it's important for the country. So we will go by the wisdom of Mamata Banerjee. So this is where I think he knew how and when to adjust with the allies. Otherwise, to manage 10 years with different partners is not easy. And that also personally unblemished.